program will begin shortly. Launch sequence. Activate. Warning, the following content is not politically correct. Viewer discretion is advised.
Welcome back to the channel today, everyone. I'm your host, Sarah Higdon. This is Transform to Freedom. It's been another interesting week. Hope y'all had a good one. It's good to be back with y'all on a beautiful Monday. I hope y'all enjoyed the weekend. I actually got to go out. We had a nice little weekend here in Georgia. If you saw, I posted some pictures. Me and the dog went to hang out down in on the Beltline in Atlanta, which is actually one of my favorite parts about living in the city, is that we have this like green space that we can just kind of walk. There's like a trail that goes, through most of the city, actually. It's kind of on the outskirts a little bit though. And there's bars and everything like that along the Beltline. So, and almost all of them are dog friendly. So it's a great summer activity that I'm really excited for. Now, summer spring activity, because if I'm taking Stella with me to go walk the neighborhoods and stuff, she's 7 years old, and when it gets too hot, in Georgia, it gets so humid that she can barely breathe. So it was a really good weekend for us. But yeah. Now, if you didn't see, I uploaded a video last Thursday as well. So I'm doing a little bit more content like that. But if you saw on Thursday, I uploaded a video which was kind of some disturbing stuff coming out of Colorado. The Boulder Valley Health Center in Boulder, Colorado, was teaming up with the University of Colorado Boulder to bring sex education to fifth graders. That was it, 5th through 8th grade. Like a summer camp dedicated to sex. Because, yeah, I'm sure that's what these kids want to be doing on their summer vacation, is learning all about sex. And I explained in the video kind of why I think it's not so much the sex education aspect of it. I think a lot of, and when some of the comments in there were right, where they said, people in the comments had said they knew about people who would send their kids to this stuff to know, to not be shamed by their friends, or just it's kind of like the trans housing moms and the woke, the AWFLs, the awfuls, the affluent white female liberals who would send their kids there to be seen, as, accepting and part of the woke and in the in crowd with their friends, and then not realize what these are teaching. But everything about this felt just wrong. It felt wrong. Obviously, I think parents have a choice to send their kids there. I don't know who's sending their kids there, honestly. It seems like a very... It seemed like an indoctrination camp into woke leftist ideology, just from even the description, and then going deeper into what the Boulder Valley Health Center does and everything like that. So go watch that video because I break it down in there. But I'm mentioning this now because we have an update to this case. So, let me go into, okay. So, Boulder Valley Health Center summer camp is canceled. They canceled it because after it gained attention, and to be honest, I was one of the only ones that I think made the video about it. So maybe it was because we were highlighting attention to it here. But they canceled it, said due to safety concerns, the Boulder Valley Health Center CU Boulder's Renee Crown Wellness Institute sex ed camp for 5th to 8th graders has been canceled. The camp aimed to provide age-appropriate sex education to prevent unwanted pregnancies and emphasize the importance of sexual health for overall well-being. Any extrapolation about what the camp's intentions is incorrect. I mean, I didn't make a lot of extrapolations as to what I would have assumed this camp was. Now, I think I alluded to what I found this camp to be. I don't see how 2 weeks is needed for, quote, age-appropriate sex education. I don't know why that's needed. I don't know why 2 full weeks about sex education for these kids is needed, especially when the schooling system in Colorado already teaches sex education. I mean, what goes beyond that? I don't know. Like I said, it was more of there was talk of like what is it, the sexual justice. It was like a justice focused class or course, which again just kind of ties back into the woke social justice warrior class. And like I said, I broke it down, but I just wanted to bring this good news to you. But definitely still go watch the video because it was good. It was good. But I wanted to bring the good news to you that we got it done. They're not having this anymore. Even in woke Colorado, and they see once the sunlight becomes the disinfectant on their ideology, people start to get outraged. Now, the whole idea that it's due to safety concerns, like, sorry y'all, like, that's almost telling on yourself. Like, I typically we have not seen, or traditionally we've not seen, people on the right and conservatives acting with violence when this stuff comes up. It's historically those on the left who vandalize Tesla dealerships, who riot and cause harm to cities and people and everything like that when they don't get their way. Typically, from my experience, any conservatives are usually pretty peaceful protesters, because again, you don't win acceptance through violence. You don't win it at the barrel of a gun. You win it by gaining hearts and minds. So yeah. Another updated story that we talked about a few months ago, if you remember, this Black Hawk crash in the Potomac River. So they crashed with the airline that was coming in. People started speculating that it was a trans person, who I now know that I actually have spoken with the trans person that they assumed it was at the time. Obviously, she's alive and well, but this kind of goes back to how everybody wants to blame trans people for everything sometimes. And they're always looking for who to blame. DEI hires, everything like that. They're still kind of claiming that now that they've said this Rachel Labach, ignored instructions before mid-air collision over the Potomac. So this is the news out this weekend after investigators have said that the female pilot of the Black Hawk had ignored instructions from her co-pilot. So from the Post-Millennial, the pilot of the Black Hawk military helicopter that collided with passenger airplane over Washington, D.C. in January ignored instructions to change course moments before the crash took place, according to the New York Times. Captain Rebecca Labat, piloting the Black Hawk, was undergoing an annual flight evaluation at the time, while her co-pilot, Chief Warrant Officer 2, Andrew Lloyd Eves, served as the flight instructor. Air traffic controllers had warned the helicopter crew about a nearby passenger airplane, and both Labat and Eves acknowledged the warning, opting to proceed under visual separation. This is a method where pilots are allowed to continue flying in the area observed by using their own observations rather than adhering to instructions from air traffic control. There was a point where the warrant officer said that he believed that air traffic control wanted them to make a left turn towards East Bank River, saying that turning left would have opened up more space between the helicopter and flight in the aircraft, which is heading for the runway. She did not turn left, and obviously we know what happened there. So they're basically saying that she didn't listen to her co-pilot in this, who was basically her instructor. Now, a lot of people have speculated, like, hey, she outranked everybody in the aircraft. She's overall responsible. I mean, obviously she's overall responsible, but she outranked everybody, so they couldn't really do anything, which that's not the case. Okay. In the military, a CW2 is actually seen quite highly, is seen as a chief advisor with a lot more usually with a lot more military experience than a captain. As well, when somebody's going under a check ride or anything like that, when you're doing training, your NCOs or your warrant officer, whoever is in charge of that training exercise, any officer in the military knows that they are taking a step back and just taking cues from that person, right? So if this was a check ride, like I mean, I had to, one of my NCOs certified me to drive a Humvee when I was in the military, right? Technically, they have the power to pass or fail me, so it's my responsibility. I listen to them. I listen to their instructions at the time that we were doing that. Rank really doesn't come into play in a lot of these situations. So that that whole thing where she pulled rank or whatnot it doesn't really make sense to me. There's now, I mean, a lot of people are speculating. Even the report that had come out was that she did it on purpose. But the investigators said that they will never know. Nothing shows, and we may never know whether she intended to do it or not. The only evidence is that the co-pilot, like, she ignored multiple warnings to turn left and go in a different direction, and she didn't. Why? Again, we don't know. I mean, she served as an aviation officer since July 2019 and had around 500 hours of flight time in a Black Hawk. That's actually quite a bit of flight time, especially for an officer to be flying. Warrant officers tend to fly a lot more than officers, from my experience. Officers tend to fly for proficiency because they need to, but there's a lot of more admin stuff, leadership stuff that officers tend to have to do that doesn't allow them to fly. Where warrant officers are typically your pilots in the military, because they kind of have free reign. They don't really fall on. They're an officer in the extent that they have more seniority. And I think you have to be an officer, at least a warrant officer, to fly in the military. So 500 flight hours is quite a lot, and she'd been flying since 2019, so she was an experienced pilot. Like, this wasn't like a DEI situation like I think a lot of people are trying to say. I think this kind of concludes that this wasn't a DEI situation. She had the experience that she needed to be, flying. And like I said, 500 flight hours is quite a bit when you really think about it. So yeah, just but that's the update on that. That basically, unfortunately, 64 passengers were killed on the American Airlines flight, and we don't really know if she meant to do it, but it does seem like everything could have been avoided. What's really interesting, though, is the warrant officer does have a stick that he could have taken control of that aircraft if he thought that something was that dangerous. That's the other thing that's still a question in my mind. I don't know. Then kind of going back a little bit too. Now we talked about, I think we talked about this a few months ago, where we were talking about the issues of the First Amendment and the administration being able to revoke visas of students who were here legally, who were executing their First Amendment rights to protest. As long as they're not committing any crime, they have a right to free speech and to say what they want, even if it's against our government or anything like that. They were saying this was anti-Semitic, but it kind of goes into what is hate speech, what constitutes hate speech. And so it turns out we were kind of right. So I mean, my idea is that yes, people that are here on visas, that are legal immigrants, legal visitors to our country, do have rights under the U.S. Constitution. They do have the right to free speech. They have the right to due process. They have basically all the rights under the Constitution that we would normally have. And there's case law that says this, right? So there's precedent set by the Supreme Court. There was a court case, what was it, back in the 60s, when there was like the whole Red Scare, the communist stuff, where they deported a person for having simple communist views, and the Supreme Court said you can't do that. He's still entitled to free speech as long as he's here in the country. On our soil, we believe that these rights are enumerated in the Constitution, are granted by, their what is it? They're granted by our Creator, not by government. And so we believe that everybody here has those rights. And so the Trump administration is now reversing course, and they're now restoring legal status to thousands of students who they said violated, that they were going to cancel their visas for basically the protests, the pro-Hamas, I guess, protests, the pro-Palestine protests that were happening across the country on university campuses. And basically, again, it's like, if you don't violate U.S. law, then there is no justification for removing legal status, and the administration does not have the ability to arbitrarily remove legal status from people that are here in the country, because they don't agree with their views. So I think it's interesting. We're starting to see that now, and we're going to talk a little bit about where I think the Trump administration is getting into a little bit more murky water when it comes to claiming people are part of gangs to deport them as well. It seems a little bit more like the Patriot Act, where it's like scaring people that it's almost like a Kafka trap, where if you disagree with the deportations or the lack of due process that they're having there, they are saying that like they'll claim that you agree with you disagree with sending murderers and stuff out of this country, and we'll talk about that in a little bit. But we're going to talk about that. But first, okay. If you didn't see, last week, Epstein victim Virginia Giuffre died in apparent suicide. Now, if you haven't been watching this has kind of been an interesting situation. And if you believe that she died of suicide, I feel like I have a bridge to sell you somewhere. I don't know who actually believes that this was suicide. It doesn't make sense to me. There's been a lot of weird situations that have come up with Virginia's story. And from her family put out a statement that said it is with utterly broken hearts that we announce that Virginia passed away last night at her farm in Western Australia. She lost her life to suicide after being a lifelong victim of sexual abuse and sex trafficking. Virginia was a fierce warrior in the fight against sexual abuse and sex trafficking. She was the light that lifted so many survivors. In the end, the toll of abuse is so heavy that it became unbearable for Virginia to handle its weight. She was 41 years old. She was the accuser of, she accused Prince Andrew of rape when she was one of Epstein's victims. And this whole thing, it just goes down. It's kind of like, Epstein didn't kill himself. Virginia didn't kill herself. I think that it's quite like all these people that have been involved in these situations end up in these same paths. And she was literally struck by a bus. She had been in serious condition. She recovered from that and then goes on to commit suicide. Everything about this seems strange. It definitely, I mean, this is me putting the tinfoil hat on, but at the end of the day, why would so many people in these situations wind up dead? Especially during an administration who seems to want to get to the bottom of the Epstein files and expose all of those that were involved. It's again one of these things where it seems like there's just this deep state situation where they will eliminate any people that they deem as a threat. And with the Trump administration supposedly looking into the Epstein files, Virginia seemed like somebody who could have helped with that and actually got justice for what was going on or what happened. I mean, this is what she said before, so let's play this video. Oh, wait. Oh, I lost. 1 second.
woke me up in the morning and said, "You're going to meet a prince today." I didn't know at that point that I was going to be trafficked to that prince. And then that night, Prince Andrew came to her house in London, and we went out to Club Tramp. Prince Andrew got me alcohol. It was in the VIP section. I'm pretty sure it was vodka. Prince Andrew was like, "Let's dance together." And I was like, "Okay." And we leave Club Tramp, and I hop in the car with Ghislaine and Jeffrey. And Ghislaine said, "He's coming back to the house, and I want you to do for him what you do for Epstein." I just couldn't believe it. I couldn't believe that even royalty were involved. First time in London.
So she was the one that spoke out. She's key to this. Like I said, then she had been hit by a bus. Let me see. What was her statement? She had put out this statement not long ago. On March 31st, she said this on her. She said, "This year has been the worst start to a new year, but I won't bore anyone with the details. But I think it's important to note that when a school bus driver comes at you driving 110 kilometers as we were slowing for a turn, that no matter what your car is made of, it might as well be a tin can. I've gone into kidney renal failure. They've given me 4 days to live, transferring me to the specialist hospital and urology. I'm ready to go, just not until I see my babies one last time." But you know what they say about wishes. In one hand, wishing the other and guarantee it's still going to be crap at the end of the day. Thank you for being the wonderful place of the world and being great part of my life. God bless you all. So she was. Here's the one possible scenario is that this accident caused head trauma that caused PTSD that caused, what is it? Traumatic brain injury can do some crazy things to you as well. And there is a possibility that the TBI that she suffered from this, she literally recovered from this and then goes on to commit suicide. It just doesn't seem that plausible to me. It just doesn't. And then you have her lawyer who told the Daily Mail that there's no signs that Jeffrey Epstein's victim, Virginia, would take her own life. As her lawyer speaks out on conspiracy fears, says Virginia Giuffre was found dead on Friday night. Her lawyer remains in shock. Final photos is revealed. There was no signs, which, again, when people do this, there typically aren't signs, or you miss the signs when they happen. So it's not to say that she didn't, but again, it just seems very suspicious of everything. But then you have this, right? Then we go back to this and we see, the influencers getting the Epstein photo op, and then that compounds to be like, it doesn't seem like we're ever actually going to get the full list. This was the photo op that really didn't have any new information in it, and so it kind of seems like this administration is not as serious as they led on to believe, that we were going to get the actual Epstein files. This was a disaster. Everybody that watched this is a disaster. And it almost seems like if the administration would have started to arrest people close to the Epstein situation, there is a possibility. I'm not going to say for sure, but I mean, there is a possibility that what happened to Virginia wouldn't have happened. Maybe she would have had some hope that something was actually going to be done, right? It's a sad situation, but it doesn't seem like this administration really plans to get to the bottom of it. It really does feel like we don't know what's going to happen now. Again, then what is that today? Good on DC Drano. So DC Drano was at the White House and actually pressed on when these files are coming out. He was one of the ones that had gotten the fake files, but he asked the question to understand when we will get the files. This was the interaction.
My question is about the Epstein files. And a couple months ago, the DOJ released what they called phase 1 of the Epstein files. And they announced that a lot of those files, the remaining files, probably the bulk of the files, are actually in the New York field office. They requested that they be returned the day after. And some legacy media reports show that not only were those files returned to the DOJ, but that hundreds of FBI agents are going through them day after day and getting them ready for public release. Do you have any updates from the DOJ or the FBI on when those files are expected to be released, and also when we might start seeing some arrests of the client list?
Sure. I can assure you that the Attorney General and her team at the Department of Justice are working on this diligently. For a specific timeline, I'd have to check in with them. And we can certainly do that for you, Rogan, in the effort of transparency. But I will tell you, the Attorney General is a bulldog. She is someone you want on your team. And when she wants to get something done, she gets it done. I've seen her do it in various instances already in her time as Attorney General. And when she makes a promise, she keeps it. So I think I don't have a specific timeline on you for that, but I do know that they're working on it over there.
Thank you. My question.
It's interesting that we are here almost in May, 4 months into the administration, and she says if the Attorney General wants to get something done, she gets it done. So then the question would be, is this not a priority to the Attorney General? Because if she wanted to get it done, she would have got it done. I just don't think that this statement here helps the credibility. It doesn't. It's not the statement that I think that Caroline Leavitt was going for. To be quite honest, I think she was trying to obviously prop up the Attorney General as a go-getter who's going to get it done. But I think it came across to a lot of people that it's just not high on her priority list, because if she wanted to get it done, she would have. That's just me. But hopefully we see this list come out soon. Hopefully we get some transparency now that we have people are starting to ask the questions, everything like that. Like, let's get this list out there, because I think a lot of people now are saying that don't think that we're going to get it. 1 second. I think a lot of people think that we're not going to get it, and me included. I'm very much. I mean, I'm kind of pessimistic on this one, and I think if we had gotten more information sooner, if they had pulled, if they had, assured somebody like Virginia that this was actually going to go, and that, I mean, I think that she's living in a place where in a situation where she doesn't know what's going on. And to be one of the first Epstein accusers to come out, it's a difficult situation when you think about it, because you do know that these are powerful people who probably had Epstein, possibly even had Epstein killed while he was in prison. So we don't know. We don't know what would have happened in that situation. So it is one of those things, right? Moving forward, let's talk about, and speaking of Pam Bondi and the Department of Justice. So report comes out. What was this today? No, it came out a couple of days ago. The Trump DOJ clears federal authorities to arrest Tren de Argua gang members without a warrant. So obviously, anything, allowing to do anything without a warrant, my spidey senses go up when I hear that we are not doing a warrant, we're not giving due process. All these things are kind of coming up into my mind, right? The whole situation that comes up, like, people, I don't think people understand, because at the end of the day, I do believe that anybody who came here illegally, we can deport them. But there's a difference between deporting people because they're here illegally and then sending them to a supermax prison in El Salvador without being charged with any crimes. And supposed gang members included. Because at the end of the day, like, if like we can't send anybody to prison without proving that they've been charged with a crime. Yeah, Jen, you're right, absolutely right. It gives Patriot Act Part 2. Like, they're utilizing the fears of the people to take away the rights of everybody. And it does seem like that there will be American citizens get caught up in this because they arrest them, they detain them without a warrant. And that's kind of where, so I pulled up the actual, this is the guidance from the Attorney General, and there was some stuff in here when I was looking at it. So if you don't know, they're using the Alien Enemies Act as the way that the president can and ICE can just deport anybody who has had is deemed to be an illegal alien, is deemed to be an enemy alien of the U.S. And send them out of the country. And at this, they've MS-13 and what is it, the Tren de Argua gangs are deemed as terrorist organizations. So basically, like, we send terrorists to Guantanamo Bay because they have distinct knowledge or are a threat to this nation. That's kind of what they're trying to do with this entire gang movement here, is not charge them with any crimes, but send them to El Salvador without any due process. And obviously, you're going to get people who are innocent are going to be wrapped up in that. And so we're sending innocent people to these massive detention centers. And then they're using, like I said, it's kind of a Kafka trap, to where it's like, if you want due process, if you want these people to face trial before sending them to a supermax prison, then you somehow support murderers and gang members, but we don't even know if they're murderers and gang members type stuff. But the Aliens Enemies Act is what they're using for this. Let me see where else. So in order for them to send them out of the United States, they have to be 14 years or older. not a U.S. citizen or lawful permanent residents in the United States. So basically, they have to be an illegal alien, a citizen of Venezuela. I don't know why that's different, but or a member of a hostile enemy, Tren de Aragua, as determined by reference form AE1 or AEA-21 titled Alien Enemies Act Violation Guide, attached to the memorandum. Let's see. There was a part. So this step one is the validation of that this person meets the validation of the status. So this is where it kind of comes down to it. So issuance of warrant of apprehension and removal. If at the conclusion of step one, a supervisor approves a line officer's validation determined by a supervisor, must then issue a warrant of apprehension and removal for subject alien by assigning the top portion of the form titled Notice and Warrant of Apprehension and Removal under the Alien Enemies Act. To the extent possible, therefore, before apprehending an alien enemy, officers should conduct standard conflict checks to ensure apprehending and removing alien is consistent within interest of justice. Let me see. After a supervisor issues the warrant, apprehension and removal of deconfliction, officers shall use available tools immediately apprehend validated enemies whenever found in the United States, including but not limited to inside alien residents and workplaces. Prior to entering an alien enemy's resident to apprehend an alien enemy, officers must have reason to believe the validated alien enemy is present inside the residence. And then it says, to be clear, as outlined below in section titled Apprehensive and Removal Procedures in reactive matters, it is not necessary to complete the forms above prior to apprehending an alien enemy. Where an officer has a reasonable belief that all four requirements to be validated as an alien enemy are met, in such circumstances, officers are authorized to apprehend alien enemy and therefore complete the forms afterwards. Seems like a backward situation to me. Like, how do you know? Like, if you have reasonable belief that this person meets this criteria, then you can just bypass the criteria and then say, whatever, we're just going to fill out the paperwork later. It's basically what they're saying. We're going to apprehend you. We're going to hold you without any reasonable cause. I mean, we're going to hold you and then until you can prove to us that you don't meet these standards. So like if you have somebody who is of Hispanic is Hispanic and you think that they're somebody on this list and you come across them, then and they don't have, say, a driver's license on them or they don't have identification on them, which unless you have probable cause to even search for identification, apparently they're saying that just looking like a gang member is probable cause to ask for identification. Now, this will end up being used against it's used against U.S. citizens as well, because you would have them violating Fourth Amendment rights. There's no probable cause to search somebody, and then they can be like, oh, but you look like a gang member, so we have to search you. We have the right to search you because you look suspicious, because you look like you are a gang member. And then in this section, it says, while a judicial or administrative arrest warrant is not necessary to apprehend a validated alien enemy to perfect apprehensive operation plans, officers should consider consulting federal prosecutors in the relevant district to obtain criminal search warrants and or criminal arrest warrants based on violations. For example, failure to carry immigration documents. So they're basically, again, that's you look like you might be an illegal alien, so we're just going to search you and we are going to apprehend you for failing to carry immigration documents, even if you're a U.S. citizen and don't have any ID on you. Failure to register and failure to comply with addressed obligations. Smuggling and harboring illegal aliens. Illegal entry and re-entry, possession of firearm by an alien. Beyond these crimes, because Trende Argua has been designated a foreign terrorist organization and specifically designated global terrorist, crimes include providing material support, violating orders issued under the National Emergency Powers Act, may also be relevant to address in any consultation. While the ultimate goal is immediate identification and removal of alien enemies, with federal prosecutors who are required to support these operations, every step may enhance an officer's ability to conduct apprehensions safely and effectively. So this part right here again too is the whole smuggling and harboring aliens. That again to me sounds like they are saying that if you're a U.S. citizen, they can now search your house if they're looking for an illegal alien without a warrant. That's kind of the way that reads to me. So they're allowed to take a U.S. citizen's Fourth Amendment rights to illegal search and seizure to, if they believe that that you may be harboring somebody who's here illegally. It seems like this could be, again, it does seem very much, and Jen, you said again, Patriot Act part 2, because I've seen people say, well, if you're not harboring illegal aliens, then you have nothing to worry about. But if you're, wait, so if you're, they're using the same thing. If you know, when they introduced the Patriot Act, it was, if you aren't doing anything illegal online, then you have nothing to worry about. You have nothing to worry about if you're not doing anything wrong. If you're not harboring illegal aliens, then you have nothing to worry about. You're not doing anything wrong. And the problem is that they will enter your house under the guise that they're looking for illegal aliens, but then they will try to search for anything else you may be doing wrong. Again, there's the reasons why we have illegal search and seizure in this country, and it's so that they can't. It's also the reason why you have the right to remain silent until you have an attorney present. You shouldn't say anything to police because they can twist what you say. They can twist, what they may find in your house. If they can do a whole bunch of other things, even if you're not doing anything wrong at that time. So what does seem interesting about this, though, this is talking more just about deportations. So detention, removal, verification for removal. So this is where we go into the idea that, like, this is where, for me, it's hard to lay out there what I completely believe on this, because like I said, I believe there's a massive difference between an illegal alien who is not supposed to be here, somebody who came here illegally, and just deporting them back to their home country. I think there is something that is something that should be done. I think that deportations back to home countries should be done. Yes, after due process. Now, here's the thing. Everybody will say, "Oh, they don't deserve due process." No, everybody deserves due process. The thing is how, like, what does due process look like, right? When I say I want due process, it would mean that they go in front of a immigration judge to determine whether they are actually illegal or not. Like, it's as simple as that. Like, that's due process for somebody who came here illegally. Like, there is a process to show where, like, how, like, whether you are or are not here illegally. So it doesn't need to be like this long drawn out process, but there does need to be some process, because otherwise you would have them sending US citizens outside the country again. So like I said, but having due process means that you get some sort of day in court, basically. So again, our system is you're innocent until proven guilty. So if they come here and say, "Hey, line people up, like, where are your documentations to be here? Are you here legally or illegally?" If they say, I can't prove that I'm here legally, like, if we're saying, no, here's what we have, you're not here legally, we don't have you in any of our record systems, and that person doesn't have anything to contradict what our justice system's saying, then that judge is like, okay, cool. And it's like a conveyor system. It can be quick and easy. It doesn't, due process does not mean long and drawn out. Which is like, so which is one of the situations. Now, there's a whole I have a whole different issue with people sending these people to El Salvador, right? Because again, even if you are a gang member but you have never been caught doing any crime, so say, or a suspected gang member, even though you've not been caught doing any crimes. So say they don't know if you've ever done anything actually wrong. You just hang out with these other gang members. Then if you've never been caught doing what, like, smuggling drugs or committing murders or any of that stuff, if you've never been caught doing that stuff, then I don't think it's right that without any court date, without any conviction, like no convictions or anything like that, then how are we why are we sending you to a prison in El Salvador, one of the worst prisons in the world, for simple suspecting that you are a criminal gang member? So that's where I have an issue. If we're just suspecting that somebody's a criminal gang member and we're not actually trying them for actual crimes and not actually giving them a sentence, then that's an issue. We're just sending them there basically for the rest of their lives to die in prison. Because that's kind of what it sounds like. Like with this case, it's like the El Salvador president has basically said they're not trying these people. They're literally just a base. We're paying them to house these people in this massive prison. So it becomes a sticky situation, because at least with Guantanamo Bay, we have control. We know the humane conditions that they are in Guantanamo Bay. We know exactly what's going on there. We're basically outsourcing that. And for people who have never been tried and convicted of crimes, we just suspect that they are gang members, that they are just simply because they're here illegally. We suspect it, and then our police force just says, hey, these are gang members. Okay, let's send them to El Salvador without convicting them of any crime. I think those are two different things. I think, again, deportation is, I think deportation is one thing, which I can get behind, as long as we've determined that they are illegal aliens, and that would be considered due process. But on the other side, I don't think that we should be locking people up basically indefinitely, who have not gone through any court proceedings or criminal proceedings to receive sentencing and justices. And this is where I have issues with. Now, Trump is blasting judges for blocking deportation efforts, says trial for millions is not possible, which I don't necessarily agree. Like I said, it's just, what does due process look like? So Trump says we need courageous justice in our country. If the courts don't allow what have been allowed to do for 250 years, America can no longer be the same. Crooked Joe Biden will have destroyed our country with his open border madness and allow criminals of every type to enter with no retribution. Murderers, drug dealers, gang members, and even the mentally insane will make their home in our country, wreaking havoc like we have never seen before. It's not possible to have trials for millions and millions of people. We know who the criminals are, and we must get them out of the U.S. fast. How do you know who the criminals are if we don't have a trial? If we don't have a process to figure out who the criminals are? Again, in this country, you're innocent until proven guilty. Now, there's a difference, again, between saying, okay, you're illegal, we're just going to ship you out because you're illegal. That's fine to me. But if you think that somebody is a murderer, drug dealer, gang members, then those are the people that seems like we should be actually having criminal trials for, and then prosecuting them and then putting them in prisons and not just deporting them. I don't agree with just deporting them to their home country so that way they can come back here again. That doesn't make any sense to me. So we need to actually criminally prosecute them the way we would any other crime, and then we can hold them for the crimes that they have done. But this whole thing, it just reminds me. So if you remember, this is one of my issues that I've had with Pam Bondi from the start. When she was assigned, I said this. Remember, Pam Bondi is the Florida Attorney General who put the idea into Trump's ear, his first administration, that we take guns and have due process later. She doesn't seem to be a fan of due process. And she's shown this time and time again. She's not a fan of due process. She believes in red flag laws. This is the issue that I had with her from the beginning, is that she believes in red flag laws, which is, again, the red flag laws are a lack of due process. You have to suspend due process. So that's the whole Trump statement. So we're going to suspend due process. So we take the guns first and then have due process later, meaning that if we suspect that you are a criminal, we are going to take from you. We are going to take away your rights, and then you have to petition us to get your rights back. This is one of the issues I've had with Pam Bondi from the very beginning. And it's not, it's one of the issues I've had with Pam Bondi from the beginning, and it's something that Trump really stepped in his first administration. And so I'm not a fan of that. And it is interesting. Now, this is another interesting topic, is a federal judge was arrested this weekend. Now, this is one of those things that it's hard to describe, because it looks bad. It looks bad to have a judge being arrested by the administration. At the same time, draining the swamp is hard. Now, when a lot of these when there's a lot of complaints that these judges are stopping Trump from doing stuff, which a lot of this stuff could be unconstitutional. We'll see. Even the Supreme Court has held up a lot of these things that the lower court judges have said, which the Supreme Court and the president are co-equal branches of government. There's 3 branches of government that have checks and balances on each other, and that's what the Supreme Court's job is. And so I think when you see judges getting arrested, it looks bad. But in this case, it might be warranted. And so this is actually Tom Holman actually said this. Let's see.
As I said from day one, you don't have to support ICE's operations. You can support sanctuary cities if that's what you desire to do. Sanctuary cities can stand aside and watch ICE keep their community safe, because any public official, whether you're mayor, city councilman, or governor, their number one responsibility is protection of the communities. And ICE has been clear, we're targeting public safety threats and national security threats. I can't believe there's any elected official, and especially a judge, that doesn't believe we should be doing that, and they should be helping us. But I said from day one, you can sit aside and watch, you can argue against us all you want and protest all you want, but when you cross that line, I've said this 1,000 times, when you cross that line to impediment or knowingly harboring, concealing an illegal alien from ICE, you will be prosecuted, judge or not. As I said from day one.
So that's, I think this is key, what he's saying right here. And this is why it looks weird, it looks harsh, but when it comes out that this judge had impeded ICE's operation to the point where the judge, apparently ICE had entered into a courtroom and she had snuck this person out the back door, something like that. Don't quote me necessarily on what it is, but snuck him out through through a different exit. And that is essentially, yes, that is, what is it? Aiding and abetting a criminal. So I actually have no issue with this judge being arrested when you look at it from that perspective. It does make me cringe a little bit, because we know what's going to happen the next time a Democrat gets into office. We see an escalation here. We're going to see an escalation later. And this is where we're at right now. But this situation doesn't necessarily bug me that much. It's almost like though they played themselves to make it seem like to make this look worse than it is, right? This person actually did aid and abet a criminal. Whereas the Trump administration hasn't done themselves any favors when they've been saying that they want to impeach judges who go against the executive orders of the president. They're calling them activist judges. They shouldn't be listening to them. They're illegitimate. All this other stuff makes it look worse than it is when they're out there saying these types of things. Like I said, I don't think there's any issues with this judge getting arrested because of what actually happened. But you can see how the narratives get shaped in both ways. So yeah. Just one more. Let me see, what else do I got? Yeah, we'll talk about this just real quick. If you didn't see this, Justice Jackson was talking about like what talking about like disagreeing with like what your school's teaching your kids, and she says if the school teaches something that the parent disagrees with, you have a choice. You don't have to send your kid to school. You can put them in another situation. It kind of sounds like Justice Jackson is endorsing school choice. Because it's so your choice is you have a 3-year-old sit through trans story hour without question or pay for an no. See, this is the problem. Public school should just teach the basics. Unless you are willing to allow these kids to receive public funds to go to private schools where they actually do have a choice. The public school should be the basics, and then anything extra should be put for private schools and stuff like that. It's the opposite. If you can't afford to send your kids to that, they shouldn't have to sit through all this other stuff. We kind of talk about that quite a bit on this show. But all right, y'all, we are at the top of the hour. It was good to chat with y'all for a little bit. If you've made it this far, make sure you click that like and subscribe button. Follow me across all social media platforms, and I will see you next time.